The Galactic Hall of Peace was a place where entire civilizations met. There were creatures made of light, beings of crystal and water, and tall insectoid diplomats who spoke through humming tones. The air shimmered with 100 languages in the glow of alien suns. In that grand hall, under the floating banners of the stars, one human stood alone. His name was Captain Elias Ward. He wore a simple uniform, black with silver stripes, still scarred from old battles. His expression was calm, but his heart beat like thunder inside his chest. He didn't understand why he was called there. The message he had received from the Galactic Council was short and formal. Attend the hall. Your presence is required for a royal decree. He expected it to be a medal, maybe a thank you speech for helping the Seraphin Empire during the war. But when the doors opened and the Queen of the Seraphin entered, silence spread like a wave. Every alien bowed their heads as she floated forward, her long robes glowing like moonlight. Her skin was silver, her hair white as snow, and her eyes shone with the power of a dying star. She looked at Elias, and in that moment, everything stopped. The Queen raised her voice, and her words echoed through the hall in perfect galactic standard. By the ancient law of alliance, the savior of our people must become one with the royal line. By right and by law, Captain Elias Ward of Earth, you are now the consort of the Seraphin Queen. Gasps filled the chamber. The translators buzzed in confusion. Some alien delegates whispered, others shouted. The words hung heavy in the air. Elias blinked, trying to process what he had just heard. Wait, he said aloud, his voice echoing awkwardly. What did you just say? The Queen's silver gaze didn't waver. By our law, the one who saves the crown must join it. You are now bound to me by decree. You are my husband. The hall went utterly silent. Elias felt 100 alien eyes watching him. His hands tightened at his sides. He wasn't sure whether to laugh or run. There must be a mistake, he said, shaking his head. I didn't save you for this. I was just doing my duty. The Queen stepped closer, her voice softer now. There is no mistake, Captain Ward. You saved my people when no one else would. The ancient codes are clear. The savior of the Queen's bloodline must be joined to it, to preserve the bond between our species. He looked around, desperate for someone to explain, but no one dared speak. The alien ambassadors bowed their heads. Accepting the decree, to them it was law. To him it was madness. Elias took a breath. I'm just a soldier, he said quietly. I don't belong to thrones or crowns. But the Queen only looked at him with a strange sadness. You do now, she said. Galactic law cannot be broken, and I will not dishonor it. The room filled with ceremonial music, soft haunting tones that rose like a song from another world. 2 attendants stepped forward, carrying a silver circlet that shimmered in the light. They placed it gently upon Elias's head. He didn't resist. His mind was still spinning, trying to understand what had just happened. He had fought in wars. He had faced death and fire, but nothing felt as heavy as this moment. When the ceremony ended, the Queen approached him once more. Her eyes glowing faintly met his. Do not fear, human. I know this is not your way, but I will honor you. You will not be a prisoner in my palace. Elias stared back at her. Her voice was calm, but her eyes told another story. Loneliness, duty, and a weight she had carried too long. He bowed slightly, more out of confusion than respect. Then I suppose, I'll have to learn your way, he said. The Queen gave a faint smile, and I will learn yours. As the hall emptied, Elias stood alone beneath the stars painted across the ceiling. The words echoed in his mind over and over again. You are now my husband. And for the first time since the war ended, Elias Ward realized his life was no longer his own. Days passed like slow-moving shadows in the great Seraphin Palace. Captain Elias Ward walked through corridors of floating light and silver glass, watched by 1,000 eyes that never met his. The palace was breathtaking, gardens of glowing trees, rivers of crystal water that sang softly when wind passed through them. But to him, it all felt like a cage made of beauty. Everywhere he went, alien servants bowed. No one spoke. No one dared to. He was not just a guest anymore. He was the husband of the Queen. The title sounded powerful, but inside, Elias felt like a stranger wearing someone else's crown. He would often stand by the tall windows overlooking the alien city below. The Seraphin world was beautiful beyond words. The skies shimmered with two suns and giant silver creatures glided through the clouds. Yet Elias's heart was somewhere far away, on Earth or maybe with the crew he had lost during the war. The Queen had ordered that his room be beside hers, but he rarely saw her. She was always surrounded by advisors, soldiers, and council members. When she did appear, she carried herself with perfect calmness, as if every emotion was locked behind royal duty. But sometimes, when she looked at him, he saw something human in her eyes. Loneliness, quiet sadness, maybe even guilt. One evening, as Elias sat in the silent garden, she approached him. Her presence always filled the air with a soft silver glow. He didn't stand. He was too tired to play the role of a king. "You do not attend the council meetings," she said softly. Elias sighed. "They speak in 10 languages I don't understand, and they look at me like I'm a mistake waiting to happen." Her lips curved faintly. "They are afraid of you. They fear what they do not know." He looked up at her, his voice bitter. "Then maybe they should have thought before making me your husband." The Queen's expression didn't change, but her voice grew quieter. "It was not my choice either, Captain Ward. The ancient laws are older than my throne. I am bound by them as you are." Elias frowned. "You could have said no." Her eyes flashed for a moment like silver fire. "A Queen of Seraphim cannot refuse the law of alliance. To deny it would dishonor my entire bloodline. Do you think that brings me peace?" Silence fell between them. Only the soft hum of alien flowers filled the air. Elias saw her for the first time not as a ruler, but as someone trapped just like him. He lowered his gaze. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I didn't think about what it cost you." The Queen sat beside him, her long robe flowing like liquid moonlight. "You are human," she said gently. "You act with heart before reason. That is why my people admire you, and why the council fears you." Elias almost smiled. "Back home they'd just call me reckless." The Queen tilted her head slightly, studying him. Perhaps recklessness is another word for courage. For a long moment they sat in silence, watching the twin suns sink behind the horizon. The light turned the city into gold and violet. Elias could almost feel the warmth of Earth again. Almost. Then she spoke again, quietly. "You lost your crew in the war," he froze. "How do you know that?" "I have read the records. You stayed behind to cover the evacuation of my fleet. No one expected you to survive." "But you did." He clenched his fists. "I didn't want to. I wanted them to make it home." Her glowing hand rested lightly on his. "They did. Because of you." For the first time he didn't pull away. He looked at her hand, soft light radiating like comfort itself. "You really believe that?" he asked. Her voice trembled slightly, just enough to sound almost human. "Yes, and perhaps that is why fate bound you to me." When she rose to leave, Elias stayed silent. He watched her walk away, her light fading into the distance. For a brief moment, the weight on his heart felt lighter. Maybe, just maybe, the law that forced them together wasn't just a curse. Maybe it was the beginning of something neither of them yet understood. And, as the night deepened over the alien world, Elias whispered to himself, "Maybe I was sent here to save more than just a people." Days turned into weeks, and the grand palace of the Seraphim still felt cold to Captain Elias Ward. Every hall glittered like a dream, yet to him it was nothing but silence dressed in gold. The walls sang faintly with alien energy, and the air smelled like strange flowers that never died. But the more beautiful it was, the more he missed the chaos of home, the laughter of his crew, the noise of engines, the feeling of belonging. Here, he belonged to no one. Servants bowed as he passed, but they never met his eyes. Guards saluted, but none dared speak. Every word he tried to start died before it reached their ears. Even the palace seemed to listen and judge, its glowing crystals echoing his every step. Sometimes he wandered through the gardens at night. The sky was a sea of purple stars, the rivers below shining like mirrors. Yet the quietness always found him. He would look at his reflection and think, "I'm just a man. How did I end up as someone's husband because of a law written by aliens?" But the Queen, she was different. She had begun to seek him out more often, not as a ruler speaking to her consort, but as someone curious, almost human in her attempts. She would find him in the gardens, the library, or the observation deck, and simply sit beside him. No guards, no advisors, just her quiet light beside his shadow. One evening, as the twin moons rose, she joined him by the crystal lake. The air shimmered softly, reflecting her silver glow. "You walk alone every night," she said, her voice calm but not unkind. "I've always been that way," Elias replied, his tone distant. "Humans don't do well sitting still." She tilted her head slightly, watching the ripples in the water. "You miss them, don't you?" "The ones you lost." His jaw tightened. "Every day," she nodded, her gaze soft. "We Seraphim remember our fallen through light. When we lose someone, we send their memory into the stars so their glow never fades." Elias gave a faint smile. "We do something similar. We look at the stars and pretend they're still out there watching us back." A gentle silence fell. The Queen turned to him. "Maybe that is why our worlds understand each other. We both mourn by looking up." Elias looked at her then, not as a queen but as someone who carried her own grief. He had read enough about her to know. She had lost her parents in the same war he had fought. She had taken the throne too young. Duty had become her entire life. For the first time, he saw her not as an alien bound by law, but as someone who also carried pain too heavy for words. He spoke softly. "You didn't choose this, did you? This marriage, this law." Her eyes shimmered faintly. "No, I chose peace, the law." "Chose you?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Some peace." She gave a quiet laugh, a small musical sound that made him look at her in surprise. "For a human, you speak like a poet," she said. "I used to just yell orders," he replied, smiling weakly. "Guess I'm learning." Her gaze lingered on him, gentle and searching. "Then let us both learn," she said softly. She raised her hand slightly and a small orb of light floated between them. Inside it shimmered 1,000 tiny sparks. "These are memories," she explained. "Every Seraphim keeps one. It shows who we are," she offered it to him. "Will you see mine?" Elias hesitated, then nodded. The light touched his palm and suddenly he saw flashes of her past. A little girl running through silver fields. A young queen watching her city burn. A lonely woman standing before a crowd, wearing a crown that weighed more than her heart could bear. When the vision faded, he looked at her in silence. "You've carried all that alone?" Her voice trembled. "Yes, until now." He didn't speak. He just reached out and placed his hand over hers. Her skin was cool and glowing, but he could feel the pulse beneath it. Steady, alive, real. For the first time since his arrival, he didn't feel alone. And somewhere deep inside, something changed. The silence between them was no longer empty. It was beginning to feel like peace. The days in the Seraphim Palace no longer felt as heavy as before. Something had changed between Captain Elias Ward and Queen Seraphis. The silence that once separated them now carried warmth. It was no longer the quiet of strangers. It was the gentle calm of two souls beginning to understand each other. Elias still woke early, as he always had in the military. He would walk through the silver gardens when the first light of the twin suns touched the horizon. The morning mist glowed faintly, wrapping the palace in soft light, and often he wasn't alone anymore. The queen would appear barefoot, her long robes brushing the grass. She walked beside him without speaking. They didn't need to. The air between them felt peaceful, like both of them were finally breathing the same rhythm. One morning she broke the silence. "You watch the sky every day," she said softly. "Do you hope to see your home again?" Elias smiled faintly. "Hope? Maybe, but it's far away, too far. Earth wouldn't even know where to look for me." The queen turned her silver eyes toward the stars. "If you wish it, I can send a signal across the old network. Your people would know you live." He shook his head gently. "No, let them think I fell in battle." That was the story they needed. A hero who died for something greater? Her voice trembled slightly. "And what about the man who lived? Does he not deserve to be remembered?" Elias looked at her, meeting her gaze. "Maybe I don't need to be remembered. Maybe I just need to matter, right here, right now." Her lips curved into a soft smile. "Then you already do." As the weeks passed, they began to share stories. She told him about her world before the war, the silver oceans, the great festivals where her people danced under starlight. He told her about Earth, about rain that smelled like dirt and sky, about the sound of old songs, and how laughter could make pain fade for a while. The queen listened as if she could see those things through his eyes. And Elias began to realize that she wasn't just a ruler. She was someone who had never been free to live. Every decision she made had been for her people. never for herself. One evening, they stood on the balcony together, the galaxy glowing bright beyond the palace. "Your world is beautiful," he said quietly. "But it feels lonely." She looked at him, her silver hair catching the starlight. "A crown is a lonely thing," she admitted. "Even surrounded by billions, a queen must always walk alone." He turned toward her. "Maybe you don't have to anymore." For a moment she said nothing. Then very slowly she reached out her hand. Her fingers brushed his, light as air. A soft warmth spread between them, a pulse of energy that felt alive, real, human. Their worlds were different. Their skin, their hearts, their very nature were from separate stars. But somehow that touch felt like home. The queen's voice was barely a whisper. "We Seraphim do not understand human love. It is strange to us. We bond through light, through shared energy, not emotion." Elias smiled gently. "Love isn't just emotion. It's a choice. It's staying even when you could walk away." She looked at him, her eyes glowing softly. "Then maybe I am beginning to understand." That night they didn't speak of war, laws, or duty. They spoke of dreams, hers of peace, his of belonging. And for the first time since the decree that bound them, the word husband didn't feel like a chain around his neck. It felt like a promise, unspoken, fragile, but real. Before leaving, the queen placed her hand on his chest, right above his heart. Her light glowed faintly under her touch. "In our world," she said softly, "this means trust. It means I see the light inside you." Elias covered her hand with his own. "Then maybe," he whispered, "you're starting to see me as more than a law." Her smile was soft, almost shy. "And you, Elias Ward, are seeing me as more than a crown." That night, as he lay beneath the alien stars, Elias realized something he hadn't felt in years. For the first time since the war, he wasn't just surviving. He was living. Peace never lasts long among the stars. It began one morning with a trembling in the palace walls. The lights flickered, and the calm hum of Seraphim energy turned into a sharp alarm. The air itself seemed to tighten with fear. Captain Elias Ward rushed to the command balcony where the queen already stood, surrounded by her generals. Her calm face glowed against the chaos, but her eyes showed what no one else could see: worry. "What's happening?" Elias demanded. A soldier turned toward him, his silver skin flashing in alarm. "Dravak warships, Your Majesty. Hundreds of them. They're crossing the outer border." Elias froze. The Dravak Empire, the same brutal race that had nearly destroyed the Seraphim years ago. The same enemy his fleet had fought against when he lost his crew. The memories came flooding back. The explosions, the screams, the fire. The queen's voice was steady. "Have they sent a message?" "Yes," the general replied grimly. "They demand the human. They say his survival broke their honor code. They will destroy us unless we surrender him." All eyes turned to Elias. For a moment the room was silent. Then he spoke softly. "Then I'll go." The queen spun toward him, her eyes fierce. "You will do no such thing." He stepped closer. "You don't understand. This isn't your fight. They want me. If I go, maybe they'll leave your people in peace." Her voice rose, breaking its usual calm. "Peace bought by your death is not peace, it is slavery." Elias met her gaze, his heart heavy. "And what about the millions who'll die if I stay?" The queen took a deep breath, struggling to contain her emotion. The glowing light that always surrounded her dimmed slightly. "You think I fear war?" "No, Elias. I fear losing the only person who made me feel human again." Those words hit him like a blade. He had never heard such emotion in her voice before. For a second, the chaos around them faded. There was only her and the truth in her eyes. He wanted to say something, anything, but the alarms cut through the silence again. "Dravak fleet entering orbit," a soldier shouted. "They're charging their weapons." Elias turned toward the holographic map. The enemy fleet was massive, dark shapes moving like shadows through space. The Seraphim ships looked smaller beside them, fragile but ready. He looked back at the queen. "Then we fight." Her eyes widened slightly. "You would fight with us?" Elias nodded. "I fought once to save your world. I'll do it again. Not because of the law, but because of you." For a moment, her mask of royalty broke. She reached out and touched his face gently, her silver fingers trembling. "You are the most foolish man I have ever met." He smiled faintly. "Humans are good at that." The War Council moved fast. Elias helped plan the defense using old Earth tactics. Fast maneuvers, surprise attacks, using smaller ships like wolves to circle the giants. The Seraphin generals listened carefully. They trusted him now, not as a symbol but as a leader. As the fleets prepared to launch, the Queen walked beside him to the hangar. "You do not have to go yourself," she said quietly. "You could command from here." He looked at her, eyes steady. "Leaders should stand with those they ask to die." Her voice broke just a little. "And if you fall?" He gave a small, sad smile. "Then you tell my story to the stars." She looked at him for a long moment, then stepped closer and pressed her forehead against his chest. The silver light from her crown flickered softly as she whispered, "Then go, my husband, and may the light protect you." He held her one last time before turning away. The hangar doors opened, revealing the endless black sea of stars. His heart pounded, but his fear was gone. As he stepped into his fighter ship, he looked back at her, standing proud and radiant, her glow reflecting against the steel. For the first time since the war began, Elias Ward didn't feel like a lost soldier. He felt like a king standing beside his queen. And as the engines roared and the fleet rose into the sky, one thought burned in his mind: if this is the end, let it be fighting for her. The blackness of space burned with war. Thousands of ships glowed against the stars, silver against red, hope against rage. The Seraphin fleet formed a shining wall around their planet, their engines humming like one living heart. Facing them, the Dravak Armada loomed, massive, cruel and endless, like a storm ready to swallow the light. And in the middle of it all, Captain Elias Ward sat in the cockpit of a Seraphin fighter, his hands steady on the controls. His reflection in the glass showed tired eyes but a calm spirit. He wasn't fighting for orders or glory anymore. He was fighting for her. His voice came through the comms, sharp and sure. "All wings, stay in formation. Hit fast, move faster. We're not dying today." The alien pilots answered him with fierce determination. They had come to respect the strange human who fought beside their queen. They called him the Flame of Earth, a warrior who turned despair into courage. The first clash came like thunder. Explosions bloomed across the darkness, red and white flashes tearing through the void. Elias's ship twisted through the chaos, lasers streaking past him. He moved like he was born in the stars, weaving between enemy fire with impossible speed. "Enemy battleships breaking left," one voice shouted. "Then we'll break them harder," Elias replied, firing a burst that tore through the Dravak flank. Every hit shook his ship, but his heart stayed steady. He remembered his lost crew, their laughter and courage. He wasn't alone anymore. They were with him in every move, every breath. Far behind the battle lines, the Queen watched from her command deck. Her silver eyes reflected the explosions lighting the sky. Around her, the palace shook as the enemy's energy cannon struck the planetary shield. "Your Majesty," said her general urgently, "the outer defense is failing. If they break through, the capital will fall." The Queen looked toward the sky. She could feel Elias out there, his light burning bright among the chaos. "Then we hold," she said quietly. "We hold for him." On the front lines, the fight turned desperate. The Dravak flagship emerged from the smoke, a monstrous ship the size of a small moon. It carried a weapon no one had seen before, a dark matter lance, a weapon that could tear a planet's core apart. Elias's sensors screamed warnings. His heart dropped when he realized where it was aimed, straight at the Queen's palace. He opened his comm. "Seraphis! They're targeting the palace. You have to move." Her voice came through, calm but sad. "If I leave, my people will run." "A queen must not run, Elias. Damn it," he shouted. "Don't you dare die for them." Her voice softened. "You once stayed behind for your crew. Do you think I don't understand that kind of love?" The weapon began to charge, glowing black and red like the heart of a dying sun. Elias made a split-second choice. He turned his fighter toward the enemy flagship, pushing the engines beyond safety. "If you won't run," he said, "then I'll make sure they can't fire." He dove straight into the storm. Enemy ships swarmed him, but he didn't stop. His mind was clear. Every moment of fear, every loss, every ache, all of it led here. He broke through the enemy screen, locked onto the weapon core, and fired everything he had. The explosion ripped through the sky like a second sunrise. The flagship began to crumble, but the dark matter lance fired one last burst before it died. The Queen saw it coming. She raised her hands, her body glowing with fierce silver light. She poured every ounce of her power into a shield that wrapped around her world. The blast hit like a god's hammer. The shield held, but only barely. When the light faded, the palace was cracked, the sky was burning. And the queen had fallen to her knees. Her glow flickered weakly. "Elias," she whispered through the comms, her voice faint. "You stopped them." His ship was gone from the radar. Silence filled the channel. Her hands trembled as she whispered again, "Please, answer me." Then, through static and smoke, his voice came, hoarse but alive. "Still here. You're stuck with me, remember?" Tears of silver light rolled down her cheeks. "You foolish human." The war wasn't over, but in that moment hope returned. Because even when the stars burned and the sky fell, the bond between them still held, stronger than war, stronger than death. Days passed after the battle that shook the heavens. The sky of Seriphus was no longer burning, but the smell of smoke and metal still lingered in the air. The once bright cities were cracked and wounded, like the people who survived beneath their broken domes. But there was life again. Children's laughter among the ruins, the hum of rebuilding ships, and quiet songs of victory whispered in every hall. Yet the queen did not celebrate. In the royal medbay, she sat beside a small recovery pod, her silver gown torn, her hair loose around her face. Inside that pod lay Elias Ward, pale and unconscious, his body covered in healing light. He had survived the explosion, but barely. The doctors said the energy blast had burned through his nervous system. Even their advanced medicine struggled to mend what was broken. She hadn't left his side since he was brought in. Her generals begged her to rest, to eat, to lead the reconstruction, but she only shook her head. "He fought for us when the galaxy turned away. If not for him, there would be no Seriphus left to rebuild." At night, when the halls were silent, she spoke to him softly. "You once said you didn't believe in destiny," she whispered. "But tell me, Elias, what else could bring a human across the stars to save a queen he never meant to love?" Her voice trembled. "You changed me. You showed me what courage means, not in power, but in kindness." She placed her hand on the pod, and for a moment she swore she felt warmth beneath her fingers. Weeks passed. The world healed slowly. The queen returned to her throne, her strength renewed, but her heart was still divided. She ruled with wisdom and peace, yet her gaze always drifted to the stars, searching for the one man who refused to give up, even when everything burned. Then one quiet morning, when the sunlight poured through the crystal windows, the medbay door opened. The healer bowed deeply. "Your Majesty, he's awake." The queen froze. The word struck her like lightning. She rushed down the corridors, her silver cloak fluttering behind her. When she entered the chamber, Elias was sitting up, weak but smiling faintly. He looked at her and tried to speak, but she reached him first, wrapping her arms around him before words could form. "You're alive," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Yeah," he murmured, his throat dry. "Didn't want to ruin your law, remember? You said I was your husband by decree." She pulled back just enough to look into his tired blue eyes. "By decree," she said softly, "and by choice." Tears filled her eyes, glowing like molten silver. She rested her forehead against his. "You came from a world that the galaxy ignored. You had nothing to gain, yet you gave everything. Elias Ward, my people owe you their future, and I—" Her voice faltered. "I owe you my heart." He smiled weakly. "Then maybe it's time I collected that debt. For the first time since the war." She laughed, a small, trembling laugh that carried more power than any crown. A few months later, the Galactic Council gathered once again. This time, the Queen of Seriphus entered not as a ruler desperate for peace, but as a living legend. Beside her walked a human in uniform, his scars hidden beneath his smile. When they stood before the council, the Queen raised her voice. "By galactic law," she declared, "a human once became my husband through decree. Today I make it a vow, not of law but of love. Let this union be the bridge between our worlds." Silence filled the chamber. Then one by one the delegates rose to their feet, not out of obligation, but out of respect. The galaxy had seen many empires rise and fall, but never had it witnessed such a simple truth, that courage, kindness, and love could reshape the stars themselves. As they left the hall, Elias looked at the Queen. "So," he said with a teasing smile, "where do we go now?" She smiled back, her silver eyes glowing. Anywhere the stars take us, my husband. And hand in hand, they walked toward the waiting ship, two souls from different worlds, bound not by law but by love strong enough to make even the universe listen. Above them, the stars burned brighter as if the cosmos itself had bowed in blessing.